Hi guys, welcome back. I hope you're doing well. Now what you can see on your screens is the AS Economics May June 23 paper 12 that just happened yesterday. You guys gave this paper. Now I'm creating the solution for this. But before I solve the answers, I want you all to remember that these are my own answers to the best of my abilities. This is not the original Cambridge marking scheme. Some of my answers might differ from the original or they might not. So let's get started. Question number 1 says which factor of production is needed first in order to set up a new business? The correct answer would be enterprise. The reason simple is that enterprise is a business and your entrepreneur is the first person who actually organizes all the factors of production to sort of ensure the smooth operations of a business. Question number 2 says, assuming nothing else changes, which change in economy's labor market will cause a production possibility curve to shift to the left? The correct answer should be D. The simple reason is, now this question is simply saying economy's labor market will cause a production possibility curve to shift basically inwards, as in productive potential decreasing. Now, if you increase the school leaving age, you're sort of allowing your children to enter the labor force at a much later age, right? And that will definitely result into a decrease in the quantity of labor force that will shift the production possibility curve inwards. Question 3 says, what is not a characteristic of a mixed economy? The correct answer would be A, because in a mixed economy, your government has a role in setting price. Question number 4 says, what is not likely to result from the use of a division of labor? The correct answer would be B, because motivation levels usually go down because of the monotonous nature of the work when you specialize and then you divide the task according to your abilities and skills. Question 5 says price plays a number of functions in the allocation of resources. Which statement best illustrates the function that relies upon consumer choice? Now, sometimes another incentivizing. So in that sense, the answer to question 5 would be B, because a fall in the price tends to persuade some producers not to stay in the market for a good, because what will happen is, so guys, what will happen is that, as prices go down, firms will, their incentive to make profits will go down, and they will ultimately realize that, it's not a profitable market, it's not a thriving market, and they need to sort of exit the market and enter into a more profitable market. So that makes B the correct answer. Okay, so question number 6 says, which pair of products are substitutes in both consumption and production? The correct answer would be D, spinach and cabbage. The reason is, I feel both spinach and cabbages are substitutes in consumption, right? And they are sort of similar vegetables, and they could be interchangeably used in the consumption in different dishes as well. And also, why they are substitutes in production. They're known as substitutes in production because farmers could end up sort of growing either spinach or cabbage, which is based on the market demand and or the availability of resources, right? Now, the problem with gold and silver is, because usually students are, I feel, confused between gold and silver and spinach and cabbage. So gold and silver, the problem with gold and silver is that gold and silver are not substitutes in production, because this serve different purposes, and they have different distinct uses in various industries and sectors. So in my sense, to the best of my abilities, question 6 should be D. Question number 7 is a repeated question. There's a worldwide shortage of oil. The diagram shows the consumption and production of oil for selected countries. The correct answer would be C. This is quite a repeated question. It has been tested previously as well. The simple reason is that in Russia, the production is between more than 0.4, while the consumption of the oil is less than 0.2. So there's certainly production is exceeding consumption, so there's no shortage. Question number 8 says the cross-elastic demand between bus travel and rail travel is 2. A rise in the price of bus caused the demand for rail travel to rise by 10%. So the formula is percentage change in quantity demanded of rail divided by percentage in the price of bus. Now you keep plus 2 here. 10% on the numerator, that is a quantity demanded change of rail on the numerator, and then x% on the denominator. The value of x is 5%, that is representing the increase in the price of bus fares. Only option A is giving you the change in the price from 20 to 21. It says the fares rise to 2020 to 21, which means that there's an increase of 5% in the price of bus fares. Question number 9 says a change in the price of a good causes an increase in the quantity demanded. What would be the nature of the good and the direction of the price change for this to be certain to happen? Now, we need to understand that the basically inferior normal goods, the demand for inferior normal goods is concerned with incomes. So if incomes go up, the demand for normal goods go up. If incomes go down, the demand for normal goods go down, and for inferior goods is the opposite. Now, as the quantity demanded is increasing, this definitely means that the income for normal goods the incomes are going up, which means that the demand for normal goods are going up, and that has caused an increase in the quantity demanded, and also resulted into an increase in the price of a good, because when the demand goes up, the price of the good will rise, which will also result into an increase in the quantity demanded. So all the conditions are being satisfied. So the correct answer would be D. The nature of the good has to be normal good. Question number 10, a specific tax is placed upon each bottle of perfume sold. Original diagram is demand. This is the original diagram. And the supply curve S1 is a supply curve after tax, which area represents that part of the tax revenue which is paid by producers. Now we know that a specific tax is tax per unit. It's an indirect tax causing a supply curve to shift inwards. So this entire area is basically the tax revenue to the government. The vertical distance between two supply curves is representing the tax per unit multiplied by the number of units sold, that is Y. So this area represents the entire tax payment to the government. Half of this burden represents the consumer's share of the burden, while this represents the producer's share of the burden. So the correct answer is BQUT. That is the producer's share of the burden, right? So guys, question 11, the diagram shows the supply curve of a firm. Which statement about the price slash supply is correct? Now, as you know, the supply curve starts from the quantity axis, that is the x-axis. It's inelastic overall, but as you go up the curve, the elasticity increases, right? Now, I have a YouTube video for it, so you guys can check it from there. How does PES changes along the supply curve? So the correct answer for this question is D, that PES rises when supply rises, because as you go up the curve, your PES will actually rise as your quantity supplied is increasing, as your supply is going up. So basically, it can't be A, because it says PES is greater than unity at all points along the supply curve, which is wrong, because if the supply curve starts from the quantity axis, at this point PES is 0. So that makes A wrong, because it's not greater than unity at all points. It is equal to unity at the quantity axis, right? PS is the same at all points along the supply curve. So that is also untrue, because PS is not the same along at all points along the supply curve. The PS will rise. It's so only when your PS is equals to 1, equals to 0, or equals to infinite is your PS basically constant and same at all points on the supply curve. So you could refer to that video. It's already on my channel. Question number 12 says the diagram shows the market for electric cars with X as the original equilibrium. What will be the new equilibrium when the price of electric cars battery will fall and consumers become more environmentally aware? So as consumers become more environmentally aware, the demand will rise, because they will switch to more environmental friendly products. As we know that cars sort of there's a lot of environmental pollution involved in that, and the emissions and all. So as the price of electric car batteries falls, definitely that is going to increase supply, because it will reduce the cost for the electric car assemblers, and it sort of will reduce their cost in terms of their production of electric cars and assembling of them and manufacturing of them. So D2 should intersect S2 at point C, as demand and supply both are increasing, right? So C should be the correct answer. This would be your new equilibrium. Question 13 says, what would cause a market disequilibrium? So the correct answer for this should be B, because it says that when a decrease in the demand for a product leads to some producers being unable to sell it at the current price. Because what happens is, when your demand goes down, it shifts from D1 to D2. Basically, it results into a subsequent shortage, and the shortage is represented by this difference. This difference is representing your entire shortage. That is A minus B, or Q1 minus Q2 is your shortage, which is effectively a disequilibrium basically. So the correct answer for that should be B, because when demand basically shifts inwards, so the immediate affected that it always shifts at the same price. Subsequently, the price mechanism sort of rations out that shortage, but yeah. So it should be B. Question 14 says question 14 is in the diagram, the area OP1 M1 Q1 is equal to the area OP2 M2 O2. So OP1 M1 Q1, basically OP1 M1 Q1, this is representing your total expenditure. This entire area is representing your total expenditure or your total revenue for the firm. And they're saying that this is obviously equal to sort of this expenditure and revenue OP2 M2 Q2. So this only happens when demand is unitary elastic. Such a simple question. Total revenue equals total expense. So the correct answer for this should be unitary elastic. And also we can see that this is a rectangular hyperbola. So and the PED for rectangular hyperbola is unitary elastic. Okay, question 15 says the table shows changes in the consumer expenditure on various goods when our income increases from 20,000 to 24,000. So there's a rise in 20% as far as your income is concerned. Now here they have given the amount spent on the good, which is total expenditure. So let's assume that the price of each good is $1, and let's take out the quantity. So it will be the quantity will be the same as the expenditure, that is 100 units, 96, 100, 100. So assuming all else remains unchanged, let's say that the price does not changes, and let's keep the assumption of ceteris paribus that everything else is not changing and the price is constant and all the other factors are constant. For which goods is the consumer's income elasticity of demand greater than 1? So so the answer is D basically, and this is also a repeated question because the YD is for D is for Z, the quantity demanded is going up by 24%, and that gives a YD of 1.2. So 16 says which combination of a good measures is most likely to increase the consumption of a merit good. The correct answer would be A. Why? Because if you settle an effective maximum price, it would result into a shortage, right? Since quantity demanded would exceed quantity supplied because of that maximum price. But at the same time, if you sort of give a subsidy to the producers, and assuming that this is the extent of the subsidy, so this then this Q1, which was initially your Q1 was your demand at a price of P max, that matches the quantity supplied as well, and then P max becomes your new equilibrium price. So definitely this policy will definitely clear the market, eliminate the shortage as well, and then ensure that P max becomes your equilibrium price as well. So yes, and it would increase the consumption of output to Q1, because initially if subsidy is not given, then what's the point of the demand for Q1? Because even if the demand is Q1, the supply is only Q2. So the consumers will only be able to consume up till Q2 because that's the supply. But if you want the supply to reach Q1, you could sort of eliminate this through a subsidy, giving it to the extent of whatever the shortage was, and that would result into the quantity Q1 and price of Pmax becoming the effective equilibrium price. Question 17 says the table contains some figures from the balance of payment account in the United States for a given year. What cannot be concluded from the US trade from the table? So let's see, export of services were valued at over 477. Export of services has to be valued at over 477 because the import of services is 477. So the exports have to be more than the imports because the balance of trade is in positive. So we can conclude this, so this is not the right answer. Imported goods were valued at over 162. Imported goods were valued at, yes, definitely, because the balance of trade in goods is negative, so imports should be more than the exports. So exports are 163 69, so imports are more than this. So yeah, this is also correct. So this cannot be the answer because the question said what cannot be concluded. The value of exported services was less than the value of exported goods. Exported services is valued at 710, and exported goods are valued at over 1,000,000, 162 69. So exported services are valued less than exported goods. So this is also correct, and hence this cannot be concluded. However, there was an overall current account deficit. For an overall current account deficit, we need to see the balances between balance of trade, balance of services, primary income, and secondary income. Now, primary income and secondary income is not given, so we can't really conclude whether the current account is in deficit or not. So that is the correct answer because we cannot conclude what option D says. Hence, D is the correct answer. Question 18 says which change is shown directly by the use of AD and AS analysis. Aggregate demand and aggregate supply analysis tells us two things. It gives us changes in the price level and changes in the real GDP. So if AD/AS changes, definitely we could sort of figure out what the price level is and what the real GDP is or the real incomes are. It says nominal incomes is not the correct, is the incorrect answer because we sort of get the real incomes. Price level is the correct answer because it gives us what the price level is on the y-axis, right? So question number 19 says, why might aggregate demand increase when a country's price level fall? Now guys, we need to understand that the relationship between price level and real GDP is denoted through the aggregate demand curve, and there's a reason why the aggregate demand is sloping downwards because of the three reasons, that is the trade effect, the wealth effect, and the interest rate effect. The trade effect also called the exchange rate effect, but I'm not going to be discussing the trade and the wealth effect here because I just need to sort of give you the answers. The answer to this question basically is A, domestic interest rates will fall due to basically the interest rate effect, and I'll tell you why. You need to understand that as the price level goes down, the interest rates in the economy goes down as well. That incentivizes consumption and investments via a decrease in cost of borrowing. And a simple reason is that as the prices in the economy goes down, as the economy deflates, people spend more because the economy is deflating. But at the same time, they're at the same time, they're saving more as well. So savings banks receive a higher amount of deposits. So liquidity in the banks goes up. People are saving more. And when people are saving more, then banks have more deposits, then ultimately they need to lend out those deposits. And then for that, the interest rate has to go down. So basically, there's more money in the banks to be lent out as loans to borrowers, which lowers the interest rates in the economy. And that, as the interest rates go down, the cost of borrowing goes down. And the cost of borrowing goes down, the C and the I goes up. The consumption and investments increase because of a fall in as consumers and households and firms borrow more. So in consumer expenditure, investment expenditure goes up. Now, a lot of students might think if consumer expenditure, expenditure goes up, we have studied that AD will shift. It won't shift because here the consumer expenditure and investment expenditure is not exogenously or independently increasing. It is increasing because of a fall in interest rates, and the fall in interest rates is due to a fall in the price level. And that is exactly why the aggregate demand curve is downward sloping. That shows an inverse relation between the price level and the real GDP through the aggregate demand curve because of the three effects that immediately take place. These three effects immediately kick in when the price level goes down, and that's how they affect the variables in the aggregate demand equation. causing an extension in the aggregate demand curve, ultimately impacting real GDP. So the correct answer is domestic interest rates will tend to fall. So question number 20 says, what is used to convert nominal GDP to real GDP? The correct answer is changes in price level, because that I used to convert, because we know that in when we calculate real GDP, we adjust inflation from sort of nominal GDP to arrive at actual increase in output. So question number 21 says the diagram shows the two basic circular flow of income, two sector model. The what we conclude about the circular flow, that direction of the flows basically. So the correct answer should be D, resources flow anti-clockwise. The reason is that the resources are flowing, the factors of production are basically flowing from the households to the firm. So you see that resources, the factors of production are flowing anti-clockwise from households to the firm. So this sort of flow is an anti-clockwise flow. That makes D the correct answer. Question 22 says the table shows the different types of unemployment and their possible solutions. Which combination is not correct? The correct answer is A, because the rest of the combinations are correct. Why? Because obviously cyclical unemployment, there would be a recession and a falling aggregate demand. So the government needs to boost AD, stimulate AD by raising government spending. Frictional unemployment, the workers would be sort of unemployed, maybe in search for a better job, and making job vacancies more easily accessible and advertising about them would sort of be resolve this, the duration and the size of frictional unemployment. Structural unemployment is when there's a mismatch between the skills of the workers and the skills required in the industry. So to retrain workers would be a good solution. So A is the correct answer, because technological unemployment, the solution is not to introduce a minimum wage legislation. Okay. Question number 23 says, which combination of policies would be most effective in reducing a balance of payment current account surplus? Now, basically, if in order to reduce a balance of payment current account surplus, we need to reduce our exports and we need to increase our imports, right? So obviously reducing exports and increasing imports. So the answer would either be from C or D, because if you decrease the tariff on imports, your imports will go up, right? So it's either C or D. Now, as far as devaluation of the exchange rate is concerned, devaluation would make your imports expensive while exports cheaper. So if imports become expensive, the imports go down while we need the imports to go up. And if exports get cheaper, they'll sort of go up while we need the exports to go down. Therefore, devaluation is not required. So this is correct, and obviously this would definitely be correct. Then expansionary monetary policy. Why? Because when in expansionary monetary policy, it would result into economic growth and real GDP rising via rise in aggregate demand. And when real GDP goes up, your national income goes up, and when incomes in the economy increase, automatically imports go up. So we've studied that under an evaluation of monetary policy as well, that although expansionary monetary policy does stimulate economic growth, but at the same time, a counter argument to it is that it also results into a current account deficit or a reduction in a current account surplus via an increase in imports. So question 23 should be C. Now question 24 says, if a country is experiencing a period of high inflation, which group will benefit the most from this? The correct answer is D, because the thing is that companies that export the majority of their output, they will not benefit, definitely, because the price competitiveness of our domestic output will go down, exports will fall. Fixed income earners will not benefit as well. Why? Because the real incomes and the real wages will go down. It's obviously causing a redistribution of income away from the poor to the rich. And people who are on high debts, yes, they do benefit, because inflation benefits borrowers, because inflation basically it erodes the value of money over time, which means that the amount you're borrowing today will be repaid with money that is sort of worth less in the future, right? And this is effectively what it's doing. It's effectively reducing the real burden of the debt for borrowers. And now there's another explanation to this as well, that inflation at times results into higher wages and increased incomes for a certain group of people who are economically more powerful. And if they're borrowers, then they may find it easier to repay their loans, because of now they have more money available to meet their sort of repayment or debt obligation. So yes, it benefits the borrowers. Question 25. What will definitely change a country's terms of trade? Terms of trade may either improve or deteriorate when you use the word change. The formula we know, index of average export price over average import price times 100, because we are not taking a percentage, we are calculating this ratio would be converted into an index number. That is why we are multiplying by 100. Now, for the correct answer is A, because all three would definitely have an impact on the average export or the import prices. The price of imported raw materials will go up. Definitely, that will have an impact on the average import prices. A change in inflation rates would also have it will have an impact on domestic export prices, since because of inflation the export prices would go up. That would sort of improve the terms of trade, while the price of imported raw materials go up, it would deteriorate the terms of trade, since the denominator goes up. An appreciation of exchange rate will improve the terms of trade, right, since your import prices goes down. So yeah, because of an appreciation in the exchange rate. Question number 26 is a very good question. I really enjoyed solving this. So the question says that the world consists of two countries, M and N. The graph shows the production possibilities for wheat and rice. So there are two countries given, M and N, and rice and wheat. So the maximum M can produce is 100 wheat with zero rice, and 100 rice with zero wheat, and 100 wheat with zero rice, 75 rice for N with zero wheat, 50 wheat with zero rice. So 100, 75, 50. So the ratios are 1 is to 1, 1.5 is to 1, which clearly shows that for every wheat. So country M has a comparative advantage in basically wheat, since it only has to forego one rice to produce one wheat, while N has to forego 1.5 rice for every wheat, right? So country M has a comparative advantage in wheat, while country N has a comparative advantage in rice. So M has in wheat and N has in rice. Okay. So right now, let's say it says that the country M and N operate on the PPCs, right? So they are not basically producing their maximum output. So before specialization, M produces 60 wheat and N produces 30 wheat. So basically, they haven't given the quantities of for rice for M and N. So let's calculate those quantities simply. Let's say this is rice, this is wheat, and let's calculate the quantities for M first. Now, you need to understand that for every 100 wheat that M produces, M forgoes 100 rice, right? So let's say that right now M is producing how many wheat? M is producing 60 units of wheat. So how many wheat is M not producing? M is not producing 40 units of wheat because it's only producing 60 wheat. So it could produce 100 maximum, but it's foregoing 40, right? So let's suppose if M did produce those 40 wheat, then how many rice would have it foregone? So M would have foregone, you just cross multiply, M would have foregone 40 rice. If M would have produced these 40 wheats, it would have foregone 40 rice. But since M is not producing these 40 wheats, it means it's producing 40 rice. So it doesn't have to forego these 40 rice. So M is producing how much? M is producing, now we calculated, M is producing 40 rice with 60 wheat. Why? Because I just told you the reason, because M is not producing 40 wheat. Same goes for country N. Country N, the thing about country N is that country N for every 50 wheat, country N forgoes 75 rice. So right now, country N is producing how much wheat? Country N is producing 30 units of wheat. So how much wheat is it foregoing? It could produce a maximum of 50 wheat, but it's only producing 30. It means it's foregoing 20 wheat. So if country N produces, if country N produces, 50 units of wheat, it forgoes 75 units of rice, right? It forgoes 75 units of rice. And if it did produce those 20 units of wheat, which it is now not producing, then how many rice would have been foregone? 75 times 20 divided by 50 would be 30. So 30 rice would have been foregone. But now it's not foregone because this country N is not producing these 20 wheat, right? So 30 rice is actually made then, right? So these are the positions before specialization: 40 rice, 60 wheat, 30 rice, 30 wheat, total output 70 and 90. The world output is 70 and 90. After specialization, M is specializing in wheat because it has a lower comparative advantage in wheat, while N has a lower comparative advantage in rice. So obviously, M will produce now the maximum wheat and N will produce the maximum rice, since all resources are diverted towards in the respective comparative advantages. So after specialization, world output would be 100 for wheat, 75 for rice. The world output for rice goes up from 70 to 75. It rises by 5 units. The correct answer is C. So guys, question number 27 says the diagram shows the current equilibrium of an economy. The government introduces a contractionary monetary policy, which would involve definitely an increasing interest rates and also reducing your money supply. What is the most likely outcome? So definitely it's a contractionary demand side policy, or AD will go down, also causing the price level to go down. So price has to go down, inflation has to go down. So it's either A or C, and definitely the likely outcome for this would be that it would result into a fall in investments and it would result into a fall in inflation. So investments would fall because obviously when interest rates would go up, the cost of borrowing would go up and investment expenditure would go down as well. So 27 is the correct answer. Question 28 says the government wishes to reduce the deficit on the secondary income section of the current account. Which policy would be most effective? Now, if you want to reduce the deficit on the secondary income section of the current account, then a reduction in the overseas aid donation. So basically, if the government reduces the amount of donation donations it makes, there would be a less outflow comparatively compared to previous years or months or something in your secondary income. So a reduction in outflow in your secondary income, because donations are recorded in the secondary income in the current account. So that would reduce the deficit on your secondary income section. So D is the correct answer, reduction in the overseas aid donation. Basically, a reduction in the donations that are made by a country. Question 29 says supply side policies can be used to correct cost push inflation. Which policy would best achieve the same in the long run? Now, the correct answer to question number 29 is D, supporting the replacement of labor manned machines by the use of robots. So technological advancement is a supply side policy that would improve the productivity of the business, efficiency of the business and the workers as well, and sort of help in increasing the productive capacity of an economy. So yes, it would increase the long run electric supply curve, or shift the LRAS to the right and the PPC to the right. So D is to 29, D is the correct answer. All the other answer options are incorrect. Okay guys, the last question, question 30 says economic growth leads to an increased level of income and consumption per capita for the adult population. Which circumstances are needed for this to happen? That is, for the income levels to go up as well in the economy, as well as the consumption per capita for adult population. Now you need to understand that when they talk about the consumption per capita for the adult population, they're talking about the welfare and the prosperity of the nation in terms of, the consumption per person for the adult population, for the elderly, is basically increasing. So they're sort of talking about the equality factor here, basically. And we know that economic growth, although economic growth is very beneficial for an economy, however, at times economic growth is not inclusive. Economic growth should be inclusive because it should benefit all citizens in the economy, right? It shouldn't only benefit one dominant sector, or shouldn't only benefit certain elite sector in an economy, right? So economic growth should be inclusive. And if you want economic growth should be inclusive, then the fact that the benefit of the economic growth should be shared equally between each sector in an economy. And for that to happen, a policy of progressive taxation is very important, because if you have a system of progressive taxation in your economy, what is going to happen is that the poor will feel less attacked. Their disposable incomes will be higher, because the progressive tax system, guys, is going to tax less to the poor as compared to the rich. So the disproportion between, or the income gap between the rich and the poor will fall. And it's very important for this income gap to fall, because if this income gap does not fall, it's higher. If this income gap keeps on rising, only the rich will be able to afford, and only they will be able to consume. Well, the question says that the consumption per capita for the adult population is rising, right? So in that sense, C is the correct answer, because it's important for the, for every citizen in the economy, depending upon his income levels, to sort of have a higher disposable income based on how much he or she can afford. So for wealthier and rich people, more should be taxed as compared to the poor or the rich, or let's say the elderly population, right? So in that sense, a policy of progressive taxation would make sure that there's not only economic growth, it's not only increasing income, but at the same time it is in terms of economic prosperity, it sort of improves welfare, and definitely both this point would definitely lead to higher levels of income and consumption per capita. So that's it, guys. I'll end here. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you all around now in the comment section, where we'll discuss the paper together, and I wish you all the best for your results.